Without achar, the meal is simply not tasty enough. On the other hand, and do remember this, on the other hand, never confuse rice with achar. Achar is useful and fine in very small quantities. It leavens the meal, it spices up the meal, but it is not the meal. The main meal still remains solid, good journalism, investigative journalism, stories, new things, fresh air on every page. Well, I actually joined Rajiv Gandhi, for better or worse, and when he died, I think my stay there was not sustainable. And in any case, the crisis, I think, came I think on 6 December 1992. I had never done the politics of mosque and temple and so on, just not my preference, scene, ideology. We had always professed the politics of secularism, of liberal society, of unity, of coexistence, of finding harmony, and through harmony finding creativity, and through creativity finding a new economy. But on the evening of 6th of December, and I must say this, I did not blame, honestly, those who had come to attack the mosque, because they had done what they had proclaimed to do. I blamed the government for not finding the courage, the will, the ability, the moral values, the constitutional requirement of defending the mosque. That was what was wrong, in my view. I said, in life we are all human and we all commit lots of sins, but let me not commit the sin of exploitation of an event which should be condemned. So I walked away, and I'm very happy that I walked away. I'm happy that I've had the I think I shall the honesty to stand up for issues. There's a price to be paid. I've paid whatever price is required to be paid. Yeah, I have often asked, particularly Indian Muslim audiences, I said, at what point of your history did you become a minority? Now, this is in a sense, a rhetorical question, because in demographic terms, Indian Muslims have always been a minority. Even during the years of what is called Muslim rule, the population was never more than 15–20% and so on and so forth. But at what moment did the Indian Muslim start seeing himself as a minority? Did he see himself as a minority when the Mughals were in power in Delhi? Did the Bengali Muslim see himself as a minority when the Nawab of Murshidabad, who was a Muslim, was ruling Bengal? The honest answer is no. So, minority and majority are not a function of numbers. They are a function of empowerment. If I feel empowered, I do not see myself as a minority. The Brahman of India is less than 1% or 1%. Which Brahman has ever seen himself as a minority? He has always felt empowered. And therefore, the challenge before Indian Muslims in our country is not the challenge to produce more numbers, but is the challenge to use the systems of democracy and modernity in order to empower the community. Indian Muslims actually are very fortunate, because they are the only Muslims in the world who can claim legitimately to have enjoyed 6 decades of sustained democracy, not interrupted democracy, as in Pakistan or Bangladesh. Indian Muslims have become experts actually in the use of the vote in order to achieve their desired results. But until they begin to see themselves not as a minority, which has the connotations of really deprivation and the connotations of really seeking for special arms and so on and so forth, they must really begin to see themselves as what might be called a second majority, as a very, very large part of the nation, as an integral part of the nation, as one of the communities which has a very significant impact on its national destiny. The problem is that because the Indian Muslim vote is largely driven by fear, that is what political parties give it. They give it fear, they get the vote, and they keep for development for other communities. It's a two-way street on which nothing creative travels, nothing fertile travels. Muslims have to change, and then political parties will change. How this will happen will go through a complex process. I think in Bengal, for example, one can see the stirrings at this particular moment of an enormous upheaval. I am not going to say it's anger as yet, but there is a great churning which is going on in the vote, particularly among the Bengali Muslims. What shape it will take, how much will it be able to challenge the establishment? Will a tsunami that is building up in the middle of the ocean actually reach the shores? We don't know, but we do know that the process of churning, of asking questions, of checking out, they must also learn to vote on the basis of development. I keep saying that, check out, has your health clinic improved? Has your education improved? These are the issues. Have you got jobs? These are the issues on which I was reading very interesting statistic, I think in a recent issue of The Economist. In 1991, 75% of the Dalit community of Agra used to earn its sustenance from the skin of dead animals, which I imagine is a very low income economy. Today, less than 1% are getting their livelihood from the same area. Look at the growth from 1991 to today, 15 years, 17 years. Why? Because the Dalit community in UP has empowered itself through Mayawati, was not willing to accept patronage and tokenism anymore. It sold its vote at a fair price, at a costly price, and it has, you can see the results. But unless the Indian Muslim also learns to sell his vote for development, I am afraid it will end up as a stagnation. Well, obviously, I mean, the 21st century isn't that dramatically different as yet from the 20th century. We're not even a decade into it. So, no, I think the issues that I've raised from a book written 1984, India, the Siege Within, when I was very young, right to the latest book, which is Blood Brothers. And Blood Brothers really is the story of Indian Muslims through 3 generations. And how different generations address the same problems in different ways, how levels of violence change, how hope becomes bitter, turns to bitterness, and yet how this land has the ability to revive through the most simple of gestures of humanity, of friendship, of trust, the ability to revive belief and faith in the larger idea of India. And I think this is one of the running themes through all my books. I started with The Siege Within, which tried to examine why a community that would have been the most powerful community in United India decided to basically commit suicide, first by dividing itself into 2 countries and now dividing itself into 3 countries. My study of Nehru was basically an examination of the leadership of a man who made secularism into his cardinal philosophy. You must remember, India is not secular because Muslims wanted to be secular. India is secular because Hindus wanted to be secular. And Jawaharlal was the epitome of that viewpoint. the books after that on Kashmir is again examining the issue of what happens when there is one Muslim majority state. What are its impulses? How is it led and how is it misled? Riot after riot, as I said, is again a book. The Shade of Swords, which tried to examine the ideology and which really is doing quite, has been very successful internationally, which tried to examine the ideology of Islam and its application to nationhood, to understand what jihad was all about. And now I think I am repeatedly asked to lecture on the meaning of jihad, and I explain that the Quran is actually vehement in its denunciation of the killing of innocents. I think this week Tom Friedman in the New York Times quoted something from me on this subject. And I have often argued actually that the terrorists should be really tried by Islamic law, because in Islamic law for the killing of innocents they are called fasadis. There are 4 punishments: execution, crucifixion, maiming, exile. There is no sympathy for those who have no sympathy for humanity, and that in my view is as it should be. Long before we talk of dramatic things like unity, we need to do simpler things. We need to rediscover each other. I argued in a column in Times of India that India and Pakistan were not really neighbors anymore. Neighbors recognize each other. We don't recognize each other anymore. The wall has been created between the 2 countries. Now we have fantasy notions about each other. We must break down the walls that we ourselves have created or our governments have created and rediscover the fact that we have a common humanity, the fact that we have a value system which is very similar, the fact that there is much more to be gained out of peace and harmony than it is to be gained out of this absolutely monstrous use of violence which has been continuously inflicted upon us. And unless I think we can break these walls down, these barriers down, we will not discover anything even akin or remotely akin to common civilizational behavior, let alone unity. Be cheerful. I can't think of a better message.